And welcome back. So, last time I left off on a really hard swing, and I didn't fully get into my reasons for believing this theory. The idea is that all of these characters are basically tulpas, like the original idea of a tulpa, where it's a group belief-based creation creates an entity. In particular, I'm suggesting that Miss Hecate, despite how powerful and demonic she seems to be, I think she's just a tulpa with mimetic abilities. Or specifically, she is a mimetic hazard herself. She is a creation, an aspect, a muse that wants to be remembered and keeps evolving so that she can keep living on. And the reason I believe this, and the reason why I've come to this conclusion, is by figuring out what she's not. When we were first introduced to this character, early on in the series, when we weren't really given a lot of information, she seemed unnatural. It almost felt like the story was going to fall into that classic trope of demon or ghost in the website. That there's this supernatural entity who's living in the website and using it as a way to infiltrate the real world. But as the story goes on, I start to realize that it's not following this cliche, that Miss Hecate is not an actual demon. And the reason why I have come to this conclusion is because let's think about the narrative really carefully. If Miss Hecate was a demon and she brought all of these other characters to life after the party, which I should specify, again, if you're at this point in the video series, we've already moved past the spoiler warning. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go back to the first episode, listen to the first half, and then go to the website and come back, because we're getting into some shit. So after the party, after the people who run the website viewed the tape, or at least some of them who were running the website, or the club that is collecting all these characters, views the tape, all of these characters start coming to life. Now, the reason why I'm convinced Miss Hecate isn't a demon, and she's just invoking the imagery of demons, because again, that's part of her design, is because why doesn't she have full control over these creations? In fact, it seems more like that some of these creations, due to their age, popularity, and power, are on equal level to her. In fact, they might even have more power than her because they actually have an identity, where Miss Hecate doesn't. She kept changing so much she doesn't have a strong core identity. So at this point, I should probably give examples of characters who clearly were brought to life by the Halloween incident, but are not under control of Miss Hecate and are in fact maybe in different factions. And how, there are a bunch of other characters who are less developed, who are more of just blanket mascots, who seemingly are under Miss Hecate's control, probably because they don't have much going for them, and they don't have much power, and they're just following her, while there are others who are doing their own thing. And I could, but instead, I'm gonna focus on the biggest one, the most important one as far as I'm concerned, the one who really pulled the wool away from my eyes and really broke open the case for me. We're going to need to talk about Maisie the Mutt real quick. To really understand my point, we need to talk about the history of our friend and almost secondary mascot of this entire website, Maisie the Mutt. So Maisie the Mutt was originally a part of a more older cartoon, kind of like early Mickey Mouse, where there were a lot more darker themes and such. And because of that, she has a very interesting history. And that history is split between the cleaned up version that they are trying to sell to people later on in her timeline, and the version of her that is the more occult version that stuck around in the public consciousness. And more importantly, the beef between Maisie the Mutt and Miss Hecate, or I should say, the Harmonicas. Like I said moments ago, Maisie the Mutt had a bit of a complicated history. As you know, in real life, the codes on what should be shown on TV or on television got stricter. Same thing, or at least a similar thing, happened in this universe, where a lot of the occult or grim details of Maisie's original powers and association with the supernatural were trying to be removed as she became more polished. Kind of like how Mickey Mouse and a lot of earlier cartoons had darker themes. Again, I mention all of this. The reason why I mention this is because the version of Maisie the Mutt that comes to life more reflects how people see her, the overall collective. And the biggest hint that these characters have a life to their own is that instead of being direct replicas of like the characters based off of fiction, a lot of their personalities, beliefs, and things that they value have to do with things that happen outside of the cartoon world, which wouldn't make sense unless they have a certain level of sentience to them. Welcome to the amazing world of P.2's Maisie the Mutt Inkworks. So, I'm probably butchering his name like hell because I am illiterate, but in universe, Kef was an artist who took Maisie the Mutt, specifically her original design and her original theming, and bled it into his own work. He, with a bunch of other people, the Inkwellers, used Maisie along with other drawings and art to protest things they didn't like about society, taking Maisie, originally a cartoon that just simply had occult themes, and making her a symbol of a rebellious group against oppression and against censorship and against all the nasties of the world. Maisie was Kef's muse, similar to how, Miss Hecate was a muse, except the difference is that Miss Hecate is a little bit of a worm. She finds people who need muses and messes with them to stay alive. Meanwhile, Maisie never did no such thing to Kef. In fact, Maisie is very protective of those who choose to make her their muse. Remember that beef I mentioned a little bit ago? Let's get back to the whole harmonicas thing real quick. Hecate, in the form of Harmonica, the mascot for the harmonicas, was basically a cute, girly character attached to a hippie group. And as you know, just like in real life, the hippie movement was done by a bunch of boomers who wanted to protest war and all that stuff. Except, a lot of those boomers ended up turning around and becoming the same thing that they hated about their parents. Well, it's less of a painting and more of a collage, but you get my point. And of course, she was also famously the muse responsible for the design of Helena of Troy, the makeup brand. Now, of course, I'm skipping around back and forth because this isn't a deep dive. This is a theory, and I want you to actually enjoy the art I'm talking about by visiting the website. So I'm really skimming so you can get a general idea so I can set up for this very important point I'm trying to get at. Which is, while Maisie became a muse because of what she represented and was adopted by a countercultural movement and basically was revived through just being herself and being a good muse in sense of just being an artistic influence, Miss Hecate is a poison. Every single time she becomes a muse to something, she ends up making it fucking worse. Because a lot of times she goes to people who are creatively bankrupt or are running out of ideas and then feeds herself to them so that she can live longer. And unfortunately, this ends up causing things to self-implode. Makeup brands that aren't actually good end up getting a really cute mascot and end up poisoning people later on. And in the case of the harmonicas, their hippie music about peace and love was basically fucking hollow by the end of their career. In fact, that was a huge criticism from people like the Intwells, which I should have specified were a punk band who made music. I am really bad at explaining things after all. And this criticism ended up making many members of the Harmonicas upset, specifically their leader, who blames them directly for the downfall of their music career, to the point that, in a fit of rage, they are responsible for the death of Kef. And here's where the beef comes to a close. And points out the fact that Miss Hecate isn't the one in control, isn't an all-powerful demon, and is just as much a muse, a tulpa, as Maisie the Mutt. is in this one beautiful scene that you have to dig through the website to find. And I'm just going to show it to you just because I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm just going to show you the part that emphasizes my point, that these two are equals. In fact, I think Maisie might be a little bit more powerful.
Hey guys and gals, let's sing along with me and the Harmonious. Remember, peace and love. No! How are you here? You shouldn't be.
So let's dissect the scene. Maisie the Mite confronts Harmonica for the death of Kef. Now, Miss Hecate, or Harmonica, wasn't directly responsible as far as I can tell. It was the band. And that's exactly what Miss Maisie did. If you dig deeper into the website, it's revealed that the death of the individual singers and performers in the harmonicas happened in strange ways. And specifically, it seems one of them was sort of mauled to death or strangled. And that has to do with Maisie having a connection to like red gloves that she can magically control and the fact that she's a dog. It seems that when she enters our reality and makes herself visible, she doesn't present as like a cartoon character. She probably presents as like an actual dog, which is kind of cute. But the point is, Maisie has the ability to exit the world of fiction and be manifest enough to that she could kill real people within it as a revenge for Kef. But why did Maisie go out of her way to avenge Kef? Well, simple. Maisie's a good girl. She just is loyal and she cares about the people she's manifested as. And that really helped me figure out what they are. These creatures aren't demons in the shape of cartoon characters. These creatures are the manifestation of these characters and how they're perceived through history. And just how culturally they are represented, they have changed with time. Maisie was not like a manipulative demonic force controlling Kef. She was just a muse, an inspiration like she was supposed to. And Miss Hecate overstepped. Miss Hecate created monsters that ended up killing her sweet Kef. And so she avenged her sweet Kef, meaning that Maisie was so popular and so manifest that she had power over the world and she's not under Miss Hecate's control. She is doing her own thing. If Maisie was just like a demon represented by the character, don't you think she wouldn't have cared about the death of Kef? No, she cared. Not because Kef was keeping her alive, but because she loved Kef. Because he loved Maisie. Because she was his muse. And that's how simple it has to be. Art can be either very personal or very commercial, and sometimes both. Sometimes you put a lot of heart into something that ends up being commercial, or you end up putting a lot of heart into something that's supposed to be commercial and becomes personal, and that's the beauty of art. Because here's the thing about tulpas, as you've probably noticed by the people on Reddit who give themselves psychosis. There are two types of tulpas. The ones created by mass belief, mass representation, mass consumption, mass acknowledgement. The cryptids who are created because a bunch of people believe in them. And then there's the type of tulpas that are manifest because they are so personal. They are so important to one single person who basically brings them to life. There are a few characters who fall into the single person brings them to life because they care so much about them within this story, like Slishy Slasher, whose story I will get into maybe in a different video if I have time or if you want to see that type of video. But again, I'm trying to keep the scope of this video to Miss Hecate for now. But the point is, this was the moment that made me realize that Miss Hecate is a tulpa, a manifestation, and a mimetic hazard. She is this shallow creation that just follows the concept of femininity, of beauty, of this shallow nature. And she's based off of all these important things: demons, angels, goddesses, these very important archetypes within human history. And so she gains all this power from those things, but she herself is a very shallow creation. Now, I'm not sure if her first real existence was being created as a cigarette mascot. Maybe she's older than that, but we don't know yet. There's no proof of that yet. But what I do know is what she is. She's not a demon. She's not an angel. She's not a goddess, although she clearly wants to be. In fact, she's just this shallow misunderstanding of life. She is the shallow mascot slapped upon a toxic product like cigarettes. And it reflects every aspect of her being. No matter how much she wants to be
Something special. Something wonderful.
Sorry, wait, where was I? Right, we were, getting into the evidence of her not even understanding the things she's referencing. Right, the other half of my evidence for this video. Sorry, I feel lightheaded all of a sudden. Well, during a update, involving the fictional, curator of the website got a chance to go to the in-universe P.2 exhibit, which was supposed to be an exhibit dedicated to a fan club that popped up recently, trying to preserve P.2 and her amazing sea-wide adventures. And come to find out, they really are obscuring history, like mentioned in the last video. Some people like to obscure the history of characters, and anyways, oh my god, I don't feel good at all. So to get to this evidence, what you have to do is you got to click on that update page, and then once you get to this page, which I'll let you figure out how to get to that page because I want to give you some fun, you have to scroll to the bottom of the page to get to the art museum. Keep in mind that little guy who you saw up there. He's important for a different episode or a different part of the lore. You click on the art museum, you'll be brought to a page of what happened to a art curator who was stuck inside of the art building during the Halloween incident. And she is given a very unique encounter where she's given a sort of tour of her own art museum, and it starts to change and shift around her. But let's focus on the most important parts. Not an exquisite corpse, but a corpse of a different kind of art, with shallow substance and surface level value. It claims to have come from a great empire, the Greek and Romans of old. But when the curator tries to make conversation with this work of art, it cannot get the facts right regarding to civilization. It confuses Neptune with Napoleon and claims to one of the Greek, yada, yada, yada. The point is, Miss Hecate is, again, a mimetic hazard who wants to pretend she's this deep, important piece of art and history, but really, she's very shallow. Again, she steals the mimetic powers from the occult, from these goddesses, from these symbols. And it's basically spelled out to you in universe right here. The only thing missing is that it's not saying her name, but it does say something that is deeply connected to her. Her phrase, the phrase that she's the most connected to.
Something special. Something wonderful. And is that really so bad? She was designed to be the perfect woman,
the woman you want to become, the woman that men want. Is that really so bad? You make it sound like it's bad to be beautiful, that it's bad to want to be wonderful. Don't you want to become something wonderful, something important, something more than you are? I don't feel, I don't, I don't feel. You don't have to be afraid to be beautiful, you know.